Okay, we are Memdaladim Bays, 44b.
Can I just ask a
Yeah,
question
go
on
ahead.
this one? What's this part? Is this for
That's the entry for the 19th of Kislev itself. And then the next page would be the entry for the 20th of
and
Kislev.
this one?
That's the Rebbe's handwriting of the letter we just learned. The Rebbe transcribed the letter from the Rebbe Rashab.
You mean by transcribing?
Meaning the Rebbe Rashab published the letter, and the Rebbe transcribed it to be put into Yom Yom. So that's the Rebbe's handwriting right there.
Is there any difference between
No, just interesting to see it. The Rebbe has beautiful handwriting, as you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on Memdaladim Bays, 44b. You have a Gemara? You want to get one? Yeah, I can get it if you're ready.
I'll get it.
Here. Okay, we're looking at the Gemara's commentary on the Mishnah. The Mishnah had two statements which seem to be the same.
1B, sorry, B.
44b, Mem Daled Amud Beis, where it says Gimel Mem, the big letters. The Mishnah, of course, is talking about the speech that the Kohen gives. Actually, in this case, it's the officers who give the speech. It's the third speech, in which there's the dismissal, not the exemptions, but the dismissal. Those who are fearful and weak of heart leave lest they drag down the people around them. We had a dispute as to what Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Yosef Aglili, as to what exactly does it mean, the one who's afraid and faint of heart. Rabbi Kiva said it means literally. The person is scared of seeing a drawn sword. He can't stand Bekishir Machama. He can't stand within the throes of battle. It's too difficult for him to maintain his composure. And then the Rabbi Yosef Aglili view was the fear and faint of heart refers to one who has sin. That he has sin, and thus he's afraid, demoralized by past sin, going to drag down the people around him, and thus he's dismissed. Then came Rabbi Yossi and said, the person who is married to one that he shouldn't be married to, even though this marriage, Kiddushin Tovsin boy, the marriage takes hold, nonetheless, it's a marriage that shouldn't have happened. Namely, the Kohen married to a divorcee, or the high priest married to a widow, or the illegitimate person married to the legitimate, I shouldn't say legitimate person, a person born of an illegitimate relationship, the mamzer, or mamzeres, married to someone who is born of a legitimate relationship. These are marriages where Torah says not to do it, but if one did, the marriage still takes legal effect, as opposed to, say, a brother and a sister in which the marriage doesn't even take legal effect to begin with. And they're required by Allah to get a divorce. So said Rabbi Yossi, that's the kind of person who's afraid of sin and should leave. So the Gemara asks, Ma'ika, what is there between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yosef Aglili? What's the difference between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yosef Aglili? Both of them said that the person who's afraid is afraid of sin. Rabbi Yosef Aglili remained broad. Anyone who has sin should leave or afraid of sin. And Rabbi Yossi went specific and said someone married to an illegitimate relationship. But they're both saying the same thing, seemingly. That if you have sin, leave. You're dismissed. Yeah. Says the Gemara Ikibanai, there is a difference between the two of them. Namely, Aveda de Rabbanon, someone who has rabbinic sins. Rabbi Yossi, who said that the one who leaves because of sin is the one who's married to someone who's not supposed to be married. He cited as examples biblical sins, biblical prohibitions. Rabbi Yossi. He's the one who said, without the suffix of glili, just Rabbi Yossi. They're both Yossi. One's Rabbi Yossi and one's Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. So it's with the suffix or without the suffix, but they're two different people. So Rabbi Yossi, which gave the example of someone who's married to an illegitimate relationship, married to someone he's supposed to divorce. So the examples he's giving are biblical commandments. And therefore, Rabbi Yossi's dismissal is limited to someone who has a biblical, who's holding within him a violation of a biblical order. But Rabbi Yossi Aglili said that anyone who's afraid of sin should leave. That includes even rabbinic sins. Yes, even. Right?
All inclusive.
All inclusive. which further supports my contention that the issue here is not the sin itself, but the anxiety around the sin. The person who doesn't know how to move forward from sin, and therefore is demoralized and demoralizes everybody around him. Whereas what he should be doing is saying, look, yesterday I sinned, that's the way it is. I'm not going to do it again. Move forward proudly as a Jew. But this person is demoralized by past sin, and he's dragging everybody down. He succumbed to the fear of the sin. He succumbed to the Yitzhar again, who not only made him sin, but now makes him anxious about sin, so he can't even move forward. Yeah. So why does this idea support my contention? Because the Torah is speaking biblically. Basically, he's translating the words of the Torah itself. Torah, biblical command. One who's afraid, basically his opinion, afraid of sin, should leave. So the Torah, the biblical command is talking about rabbinic sins which weren't even invented yet. I shouldn't say invented, which weren't yet enacted. Unless the issue is not the sin itself, but the issue is the fear of it. And if you're afraid because of past rabbinic sin, that's a good enough reason to be dismissed, because you can demoralize everybody. So this idea that it basically understands that the Torah itself is talking about rabbinic commands supports the idea that the issue here is the anxiety around the sin. And therefore, it doesn't matter what sin is causing you to feel anxious and not be able to move forward, even if it's rabbinic or anything, doesn't matter. The point is, if you have negative behavior, that's stopping you from moving forward, you got to be dismissed, do a proper teshuvah so you can move forward, and then you can come back and work and fight with us. Yeah. Again, this is my reading into the Gemara, and you're welcome to disagree. Now, from translating the words of the Gemara, you're not welcome to disagree. You have to try to understand as best you can. When I interpret my own things, you're welcome to disagree. I don't know. You don't have to accept my interpretation. Okay. The Gemara continues. The Gemara is now going to introduce a text and tell us that text seems to follow the view of Rabbi Yosef Glili as we just explained it. Namely, Kaman Ozla Datanya, in accord with whom can we understand the following teaching that comes in a brisa. It states, quote, Sach bein tefillah letefillah, if one spoke between his two pairs of tefillin, between his Rashi and between his Shalyad and Shalrosh, right? We put on our hand tefillin, and then we put on our head tefillin. And one ought not make an interruption between the two. One doesn't speak, especially if one is keeping with the Sephardic or the Chabad custom, which is to make one bracha for both the head and the hand. In which case, the bracha you made in your hand extends to your head too, and therefore you certainly shouldn't talk. But even according to those who make two brachas, nonetheless, a person still shouldn't speak. It's one mitzvah. And Rashi actually elsewhere, it seems like, says it's talking about someone who does that way and relies on one bracha. We'll leave that alone. Rashi here doesn't say that. Okay, so the Gemara says one who speaks, the Brisa says one who speaks between the hand tefillin and the head tefillin, aveda hibiyadei. This is a sin that he has in his hands. And he would be dismissed because of that sin. From the combat units of war. End quote from that Brisa. So the Gemara says, come on, who would that be? No? Who would this be in accord with? Even such a minor sin like speaking between the head and the hand tefillin. That would follow Rabbi Yosef Glili. That would follow Rabbi Yosef Glili. Okay, end quote from the Gemara. Just a comment perhaps as to why out of all sins, this is one that's picked up. Why is this one the one that's picked up? The one who speaks between the hand.
Because it's that's similar to the common language for warfare.
Okay, interesting. I didn't think of that. Okay, so there's a sin related to that. That's Hukshikal Torah Kul Tefillin. The Gemara says that all of Torah is compared to tefillin. Yeah, this is true. I was thinking perhaps, right? We know that the hand tefillin is on the heart, right? Is near the heart, and the head tefillin is on the head. Yeah, and the idea is that this is in the halacha. It says this, that we focus our mind and heart to serve Hashem. Shibud hamoyach aleva moyach. That's such an halacha. It's one of the things you're supposed to be thinking about when you put on your tefillin, when you make your bracha. Is this idea that we're connecting our mind and heart to Hashem. So what's the significance of someone who speaks, or the sin of speaking between the hand and the head? Perhaps the sin is a representation of cognitive dissonance. My head is in one place and my heart's somewhere else. My head, I'm serving Hashem, but my heart's not there.
Your hands are serving.
Or maybe the reverse.
The mind is not.
Yeah, maybe the reverse. My heart feels connected, but I haven't integrated in my mind yet. There's a disconnect between the two. Yeah, and the disconnect between the two is part and parcel of this anxiety we're talking about. I feel like my life is in a mess. I'm sinning. My head's here. My heart's there. I can't go to war. Whereas no talking between the head and the hand, tefillin, represents a full, clear, and alignment. My head's in the right place. It's synchronized. My head's in the right place. My hand's in the right place. My heart's in the right place, and I can stay focused on battle. But speaking between hand and head tefillin is a representation of fragmentation. My head's here. My heart's there. My hands are there. I can't do this. And perhaps this is why of all sins, the Gemara uses as an example of one that even has a minor sin would be dismissed from battle. The Gemara uses this example of someone who speaks between his hand and head tefillin, perhaps. Okay, we'll stop over here. But tomorrow, what the Gemara is going to do is the Gemara is going to introduce another text, another Mishnaic text, in which the Mishnah states an extreme level of fear of battle. And the Gemara is going to tell us, I mentioned this in the Mishnah, when we learned the Mishnah, the Gemara is going to tell us that even Rabbi Yosef Lili, who learns that the fear described in the verse is fear of sin, if the person's at a certain level of anxiety where he literally wets his pants, and even Rabbi Yosef Lili will agree, this guy should be dismissed because he's definitely going to drag everybody down. Okay, but is that coming tomorrow? And the Gemara then is going to comment on the Mishnah, which said that what kind of battle are we talking about? Is it a battle of elective battle, or is it a mitzvah battle? Is it an obligation battle? Right? What level of obligation is there around this war? Have a wonderful day, Yidden.